I was working with a medic, and we got a call for a diver in distress on a dive boat just off of Indian River Inlet, CPR being performed. So we fly down there, which is from where we were to Georgetown Airport is maybe a 10-minute flight. By the time we get there, the paramedic unit is sitting in the parking lot of the inlet, and they're hoping that the boat is going to bring the dive victim to them. But it turns out that the dive boat is 12 miles offshore. Now, nobody's included that in the original dispatch. And the thing about this is we were very good. If it was offshore, it was in the water, we always called the Indian River Coast Guard Station. Always. Didn't matter. Because they had boats. They had Atlantic City Air Station on the other end of a hotline. But they didn't have paramedics. They had swimmers. They didn't have paramedics. So what we did, we landed when we saw the paramedic, he was 6'7" paramedic. His name was Lars. Think about that, 6'7" in a L3. Okay, I don't know if you know what an L3 is, but an L3 is a.
I do, but you got to tell everybody else because
it's a two-bladed extended jet ranger, and
it's a tiny helicopter.
It's a small helicopter. It's one engine, and it's not designed to go 12 miles offshore. So
it's also not designed to hold somebody that's 6'8".
And my medic was this guy, Paul Anthony, who Paul Anthony is just, you could literally, maybe someday I'll write a book about the good Paul, because Paul is just an unbelievable character, unbelievable. And Paul says, well, what are we going to do? He says, there's a guy out there in cardiac arrest, 12 miles offshore. Now, we don't know 12 miles. We just know he's out there. This 12-mile bit, we learned that later after we did this. So I said, well, we'll take a vote. Lars, you want to go out there? Lars, yeah, he's the 6'7" guy. Yeah, I'm ready. And Paul says, I ain't sitting here while that guy's out there dying. He says, let's go. And I said, okay. I said, all I got to do is fly. You guys are the ones going to do something interesting when we get out there. So we fly out there and we find the boat. And up top, circling, is a Coast Guard Dolphin. Now, they've just put their swimmer onto this boat. And I'm talking to the Coast Guard guy. And I said, is your swimmer a paramedic? And they said, no. And I said, do you know, are they doing CPR and have they been doing CPR? I said, yeah, it's witness CPR. They've been doing CPR and they feel that there's an opportunity. If we can get a paramedic to them, they think that they can help this guy. It's 50-50, but they think they can help. And I said to Lars and to Paul, I said, you guys hear that? And they said, yeah, how are we going to get on that boat? And I said, I'm going to get you close and you're going to jump. And Paul says,
God.
And Paul says, okay. Paul says, okay. And Lars says, we're going to do what? What? He says, you know how far offshore we are? And I said, doesn't matter. You go a mile offshore in a single engine helicopter, you can be 30 miles offshore. There ain't no difference. I said, this thing goes in the water, it goes in the water. And so Paul says, and the Coast Guard had a rib there. That was the interesting thing, rapid inflatable boat. And I knew these guys. I'd worked with these guys a lot. And I knew if we were going to do something, if we could tell them what we were going to do, they were going to go along with it. They were young guys. They were aggressive. And so I said, I got on the radio, I got at 16, and I said, look, here's my plan. And I'm telling you, the reason this guy was in cardiac arrest, it was rough. It was really rough. And he'd gotten seasick. And while he was diving, he had thrown up in his mouth and he'd aspirated. And so they got him back on board the boat. But it was actually so rough that the Coast Guard helicopter crew decided not to lift their swimmer back up. The swimmer was going to stay on the boat back to the inlet. And they had a Coast Guard station at the inlet. So I said, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to get right up to your rib, and Paul is going to jump right. He's going to plant himself right on the side of the rib, catch him. And they said, okay. And so Paul says, man, this ought to be something. And he says, when did you think this up? And I said, come on, Paul, you can do this. And Paul was a real athlete. And he says, okay, well, when does my medic bag and when does my monitor, when does the cardiac monitor get lowered down to them? How are we doing that? And I said, oh, yeah, I hadn't thought of that. I said, okay, I'll get right over top of the center of the boat. You drop it in the bow. And he goes, well, what if it misses? I says, hey, Paul, don't miss. And sure enough, he dropped them right in the bow of that rib. And I thought, God, could you imagine if it went right through the bottom of the rib and the rib sank? But that didn't happen. So I had to make, it was so rough, and that rib was going up and down, up and down. I had to make 3 passes just to get the equipment into the boat. So now I've got the Paul. I said, okay, buddy, you're up now. Go join your equipment. And we pull up alongside, and boom, he's out of there. Just dives for that rib, hits that thing like as it's going up, hits it center mass. And the 2 Coast Guard guys grab him and they pull him in. And I thought, damn, that worked good. So I look over my shoulder, and keep in mind, the door is open in the back and the door's open in the front. And I've literally got water rolling through the aircraft from waves that have hit the aircraft. And so I back up, and I said, and I look over my shoulder now, I'm a little bit higher. And later, the Coast Guard helicopter pilot says, he says, oh my God, he says, I watched this and I thought you guys, he said, I couldn't think what you were going to do next. He says, you just kept doing stupider and stupider stuff. And I said, well, I said, you got to understand, we were just doing the best we could. And so I say, now I go to Lars. I said, Lars, you're next. He goes, I'm not doing that. And I said, well, then you're riding back with me. And he says, I can't do that. I can't abandon the patient. I said, then you're jumping out. I said, what are you doing, Lars? We ain't got a lot of time here. And he goes, all right, I'll jump out. So he's in the back. He's 6'7". I come around and I said, now, Lars, what I'm going to do when I want you to jump, because I'm going to be watching the rib come up, down, up and down, up and down. I'm going to swing my head to the right, like just like this. I'm going to swing my head to the right, and you're going to jump. That's a signal, because I can't do anything with my hands, and I can't depend on you hearing me. You watch my head, and you jump, and you'll hit that thing just like Paul did. Well, the first time, because I had to do 3 passes to get Lars out of the aircraft. The first time, he forgot to take his seatbelt off, and that didn't work. The next time we went around, and the next time I went around, and I must have swung my head 4 times, almost broke my neck. And I said, are you going to jump or what? And I said, I have given you the signal 4 times. And he didn't answer. And I look back, and he's just standing there, and he's scared to death. And I said, I can't hold this hover anymore. So I go around a 4th time. I say, Lars, I'm yelling at him. Lars, are you going to go or not? And he goes, I'm going to go. I'm going to go. And sure enough, he does. And he misses that boat, and he just goes right underneath he goes right under the water, and he's gone. And I'm thinking, oh my God, we just lost this guy. And he pops back up, and those 2 Coast Guard guys grab him. And this guy weighs like 300 pounds. He's big, 6'7". They pull him in there. Their adrenaline is pumping. So I realized, well, later I realized, 1, he hadn't unplugged his headset. So that was hanging outside the aircraft. He lost his radio, which was a $1,200 radio, his Motorola. He lost his radio. He lost his pager. He lost his stethoscope. He lost all his equipment, right? But anyway, my aircraft is now 400 pounds lighter because Paul is gone and big Lars is gone. So we got, I hope I'm not going into too much detail, but
No, I
we,
want the detail. Please keep the details coming. This is great.
I go around again and I watch. I don't leave until I see that the rib has taken these guys over to the boat, the dive boat, put them on, and I'm watching them do CPR, and I'm watching Paul hook up the monitor. And I know he's going to shock him. They're going to give him IVs. And so this is the best chance this guy has of surviving. He didn't survive. He died. But I get on the radio now and I call the captain of the fishing boat. And I said, and now keep in mind, my back door's open, my co-pilot door's open, and it's windier than hell. And the waves have broken into the aircraft a couple times. There's just water floating through the floor of the aircraft. And I said, okay, I'm going to go back to the Coast Guard station because there's nothing else I can do. I'm done. I'm spent. I go back to the Coast Guard station. I land. I spend about an hour cleaning the aircraft up. And it took an hour for them to get back in from the incident. So I walk down, I meet the boat, and the Coast Guard guy, Paul and Lars, continued doing CPR all the way to the dock. That's a lot of CPR. That's a lot of CPR. They were bagging the guy. They put him on an ambulance, went to the hospital, and he died. But once again, we felt we had done everything we could. Now, to end that story, about 2 months later, we hear through the grapevine that Lars has been busted and fined and made to pay for his radios. And we go to, Paul and I, we go to the paramedic office, and we met with the head of the paramedics, his supervisor, and we laid out the case. We said, you know, this is total injustice. We understand he lost the pager. We understand he lost the equipment, but he was doing it with the best of intention. And he was actually very brave. What he did was extremely brave, because, you know, we fly in helicopters every day. He doesn't. He rides around in a truck. Plus, he's 6'7", and he's a big guy. And he showed a tremendous amount of bravery. We think you should reverse this. And, you know, to his credit, the guy in charge did. He reversed it. He gave him back. He gave him back his correct rank. He gave him, but didn't make him pay for the equipment, and they gave him an award. You know, some little pin that you wear. And Lars was really, really happy. And he, you know, I don't know how many years ago that was, but let's just say it was 30 years. I don't know if that's true. It could have been 25, whatever. But I just yesterday saw where the paramedics in Sussex County opened up a new building, and there was Lars standing there holding the flag. He's still a medic. He's still 6'7". He still weighs close to 300 pounds. And if I were to walk up to him tomorrow, he would look at me and he would go, "Oh, stay away. I don't want to go on any more helicopters."